Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here for another daily movie review. Today, we're going to be talking about the recent released VOD film, The Rental. It's directed by Dave Franco. That's right, the other Franco. What's his name? James Franco? Jimmy Franco? Sex pest extraordinaire? Is that what we call him? Do we call him a sex pest? I think that's the preferred nomenclature, dude. I think that's what we call those people now. Anyways, it was written by Dave Franco and Joe Swanberg. It stars Dan Stevens, Allison Brie, Sheila Vaughn, Jeremy Allen White, Toby Huss, and others. The plot synopsis is two couples rent a vacation home for what should be a celebratory weekend getaway. Wow, that doesn't explain anything. So yeah, this is the recent release, like I said, VOD horror thriller. We call this, the technical term for this is VOD trash. Yeah. It's one of these tight little 90-minute horror of errors. It's all kind of predicated on these personal relationships and kind of making mistakes in those personal relationships and the paranoia that can set in. And in this movie, what they realize is while they're staying at this vacation home, this cabin, that there are cameras everywhere. They're being watched. And while they're being watched, before they realize that there's cameras in there, they do some stuff. There's some cheating happens, and that kind of makes things escalate and spiral out of control as the days go forward. It takes place over 2 days. And what did I think of The Rental? Well, I'll say this. I think it's actually pretty well made. It's a very watchable movie. As a directorial debut, I believe this is Dave Franco's first feature-length film. As a director and his control of kind of atmosphere and tone, not bad, actually. I got to give him props for that. It does have kind of this sense of dread and foreboding. It's got a moodiness to it. It's a very small stakes film. It's a very quiet film, and all that stuff works really well. Where I have a problem with it is probably more to do with the co-writer, Joe Swanberg. Now, Joe Swanberg, if you don't know, is kind of the godfather of mumblecore, which was this movement started in New York City where these basically rich kid film students decided they didn't want to write scripts, and they would just kind of improv all their dialogue, and usually there would be some sort of high concept event that happened, but everything surrounding it would just be like kind of relationship stuff, just improv relationship stuff. And it's the kind of genre, or subgenre rather, that either you like or you don't. I most of the time don't really like it because it is aimless. It doesn't feel authored or constructed. It feels kind of just all over the place. And in some respects, I guess you could say that maybe that is the intention. It's trying to capture something real. The problem with that is, though, it's kind of a crapshoot whether or not you capture that. Now, I don't think this script was like that. I'm sure there was room for improvisation. I'm sure there was room for these actors to kind of come in and flesh out their own characters and their own character dynamics. It does feel like it actually has a tighter script because it kind of has to, because it's a series of reveals and exposition dumps kind of about their personal relationships to each other. So it has to be a little bit more mannered, a little bit more planned out than that. But you can tell, I think where Joe Swanberg I can really tell is because all of these characters are incredibly unlikable. Like right from minute one. They're just not good people, but they're not meant to be read that way. You're supposed to kind of be able to empathize or see yourself in these characters, kind of like this. It's got this kind of millennial malaise, this millennial perspective on the world and relationships and, I don't know, being a good person, but they're all kind of shitheads from the get-go. So when things start like happening, none of it's very surprising. The way they rationalize their behavior, the way they make decisions, it doesn't feel, I don't know. It's not that it doesn't feel necessarily realistic, but just like having to spend time with people like this. And for me, for a long time in my life, I really haven't had to. I kind of was forced to grow up a little bit, had a kid and got married, and your worldview changes and the variables that you have to choose from change. So when you have people that are very kind of narrow-minded and very selfish, narcissistic, it can be kind of a barrier to empathy with movies. I don't know if I would say that it's intentional or not. I don't think it is. Like I said, I do feel like you're supposed to kind of project yourself onto their plight a little bit. Maybe some of that's more to do with just the concept itself. Like you would rent a cabin out in the woods, and then you'd find out somebody was watching you. And it has like red herrings, and it has false accusations and all these kind of things as it starts escalating as the story goes. And I don't want to give away too much, but it's not a very complicated story. But it does have a few interesting twists and turns. Like I said, it did maintain my interest for the 90 minutes. I never felt bored. I will give it that. I never felt bored. I just didn't particularly care for the people that were being afflicted by the scenario, because a lot of it's self-inflicted. A lot of it's just their own bullshit. And I guess that to some degree you could make an argument that somewhat maybe that's the point. Maybe it's okay not to like these characters, because I'm not the type of person that I have to like identify or sympathize with every character in every movie I watch. I don't go to the movies to kind of validate my worldview. So that doesn't bother me, but it was distracting a little bit because they're such shits. Like they're such shitheads. So you just don't care. You don't invest anything in them. So I would say if that was the intention, was for them to not be particularly likable, that's kind of a mistake. You want at least a little bit of a hook in there, right? I need to be able to see where they're coming from a little bit. They all act like they're 22. They all act like I did when I was 22, 23 years old. Like that's their perspective. That's how they make decisions. That's what motivates their behavior. And it gets a little strained at some point in the story. And it gets a little incredulous as well. I mean, there's a scene when they first get to the cabin and, or the first night rather, and they want to do some drugs. Somebody brought some ecstasy, but Alison Brie's character, who's Dan Stevens' like girlfriend, who's tired. She wants to save it for the next night. She's been up all day. Then they drove to the cabin, etc., etc. But they were just like, okay. And then they just, and they're like, they just do it anyways. And then they have kind of this wild night that kind of escalates into other things. But just like the idea that like, oh, you guys can't wait. All you good friends, you guys can't wait a day before you have like your fun drug excursion on vacation. Seems kind of shitty. Seems kind of weak, in my opinion. I just wasn't buying it. Wasn't buying what they were selling. It has some good performances, though. I'll say Sheila Vand is pretty decent. And this guy, Toby Huss. Toby Huss is a cool character actor. You see him show up in a lot of stuff. He was in Halt and Catch Fire, which is a TV show. This movie, Rescue Dawn, Werner Herzog's movie. He was in the most recent Halloween movie. He just kind of shows up all the time. On all TV shows, movies, you just see him. He's everywhere. He does a lot of like little bit comedy parts, and he's really good. He's a really solid actor. He brings a fun energy to the movie, a fun, like uncomfortable energy, and he does kind of keep you guessing as to what his motives are, or if he's behind everything. So I enjoyed that aspect of the movie. But could I give this a recommend? I think if you were really bored and it ends up on like Netflix or a streaming service or Amazon or something, I would say maybe it's worth your time, worth checking out if you're bored and you just kind of like thrillers, like mystery thrillers. If you read the log line and the concept itself just kind of intrigues you, I wouldn't say you would have completely wasted your time, because I didn't like completely hate it. I'm just like somewhere down the middle with it. I'd give it like a 2.75 out of 5. That would be my thing. And a lot of that has to do with, surprisingly enough, Dave Franco's direction. I think he is a very strong factor in what works about this movie. I think the cast is pretty decent for what they're given. Like I said, I think just the characters in and of themselves aren't very relatable. I mean, that could just be me, though. That could be a me thing. You know, I've kind of moved on past like just kind of reflexive selfishness. So I just didn't see a lot in them that I could kind of gravitate towards. And obviously, and then there's all this kind of pandering to modern, I don't even know what you'd call it, woke politics a little bit. I don't know how else to describe it. It felt like they were pandering. They were checking a few boxes. And you're just like, okay, like whatever. It's not that big of a deal, but this also didn't really do much for the movie. Didn't actually put anything into the movie that was all that interesting. I do think you are supposed to hate at least one of these people, and they do that in like kind of the woke checkbox thing, where he says something that's kind of like counter to modern day social norms, social politics. He makes, just about just not assuming that everyone's racist. So obviously he's just a bad guy because of that, because he wants to give somebody he doesn't know and has never met the benefit of the doubt. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny, but I don't know. Yeah. Not the best, not the worst. Don't spend $7 on it though. I will say that. This is if it's on a streaming service you already pay for, go for it. I guarantee you this thing shows up on Hulu or Netflix within 60 days. That's usually how it goes with these. So, I mean, maybe then give it a chance. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, you want to keep up with everything Zoobox, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my personal Twitter. Also, if you'd like to make a recommendation for one of these daily videos, throw it in the comments section, and I will put it on the list. All right, everybody. You have a good one.